Fantastic. So one more time, a warm welcome and good evening to everybody who joined us for NATEQA Scotland online forum. Today we've got Alex joining us from Leeds and Claire joining us from Manchester. So as you can tell, we are open. We're not just open to people joining us from Scotland. We're open to everybody who is interested in learning a little bit more about ESOL and joining forces and making our life a little bit easier as ESOL teachers. Alex is based at Leeds University. Claire is based in Manchester, and she's the founder of Hearts and Parcel charity. They'll tell you more about it today. They'll tell you more about the projects that they've organized together. So I'll just hand over to them. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Gosha. And thank you, first of all, a huge thank you to NATEQA Scotland for inviting us and for creating this space. And a huge thank you to you all for coming tonight as well. We're looking forward to sharing our work with you, and we're hoping to hear a bit more about your work as well. Today we're going to be talking about communicative ESOL classes in our grassroots settings, drawing on our experiences with Heart and Parcel in Manchester and the Rose Collective online space. So we think that while ESOL provision in formal settings is absolutely essential, we've also found that smaller grassroots groups can play a really important role in creating structured and communicative opportunities for our learners. Over time and with care, we think that these relaxed spaces can grow into what we might call communities of practice, where people practice English not just as a classroom subject, but as a tool for real-world communication. So where are we coming from? Alex, do you want to do the outline?
Yeah, sure. So just to introduce ourselves as well. So my name's Alex Holloway. My pronouns are she and her. And Claire, did you want to?
Yeah, my name's Clare Courtney and my pronouns are she, her.
Okay, so here's an outline of the session. So we're going to start with talking about where we're coming from and talk about some key terms involved, which you might have just seen on our slide, which are communicative and grassroots, and talk about what we mean by those things. We'll have a couple of tasks. So one of the tasks is we're going to add to the chat, and then the second one is go into breakout rooms and have some discussions. We're going to talk about what we do and what we've done, but also try and apply some theory to that as well. So hopefully you'll be able to make some of those connections with your own work as well and maybe get some ideas too. If you want to keep your video on or off, you're really welcome. Also, it's really important to say if you want to chat while we're speaking, it doesn't distract us. We're totally fine with that. If you want to keep adding questions, we're gonna give time at the end for questions. But if you've got any questions, just add them to the chat and that's great. And I think that's all I need to say.
Yeah,
on that
thanks,
slide.
Alex. Okay, so let me go on to our next slide here. Yes, you've already seen us, you've heard us as well. So Alex, do you want to say the project that you're going to be talking about today?
So I've just founded in September 2025 a new grassroots project. It's called the Rose Collective. I didn't found it alone. I founded it with learners and volunteers from Heart and Parcel, where we met. I teach at the University of Leeds. I've worked there for about 12 years, but my heart lies with community ESOL, to be honest. And I volunteered with Heart and Parcel for about 4 years. And I should say the Rose Collective is completely online as well.
Thanks, Alex. And I founded Heart and Parcel in 2015, where we ran cooking and ESOL classes for migrant communities across Manchester. Alongside that work, I've also spent around 15 years teaching both ESOL and higher education contexts, and I'm currently researching alternative migrant education projects in the north of England. and particularly looking at the role of food and how that can play an important part in creating belonging amongst migrant communities. So I think it'd be really helpful before we start just to briefly define those two key terms, because I know they can be quite overused or used in lots of different ways. And myself and Alex have spent a long time thinking about them. So Alex, for the communicative one.
So communicative, what we mean right now, is communicating and meaning making, preferably for an authentic and relevant purpose.
And when we say grassroots, we're talking about organisations started by individuals rather than larger institutions. And they're often informal, and they're community-driven spaces focused on social change rather than profit or making money off of those learners. We want to hear a little bit about you, but I think Gosha really helpfully already put in the asked you to kind of introduce yourselves in the chat as well. But maybe Alex, you can set up this one.
Yeah, sure. So we we would love for you to write a couple of extra things in the chat if you can. So either or both. What brought you here today? And what grassroots projects have you heard of, or what grassroots projects have you taken part in that involve language learning? And I've also added the definitions for grassroots into the chat there. So
Fantastic.
Just to let you know, we're going to be quiet for a minute, and then we'll start reading them out in case anybody isn't accessing the chat or yeah.
Yes. Also, just to say that it will be really, really interesting to hear what's coming out of Scotland as well. I think that's something that is quite unknown to us still over here in England. So it would be really, really great to get your experiences there as well. Thanks.
Claire, do you want to read out Karen's comment?
Oh yeah, fantastic. So Karen is working for Tilton Community Health Project and working with a group of ladies at beginner level. Fantastic. Is that right? If that's entry one or pre-entry, and lots of well-being chats, cooking advice, and signposting. Okay, great. Lots of informal, kind of practical and creative ways. Fantastic. Thanks, Karen. Welcome.
And I can see, Kasia, you last year you taught an ESOL class at Dundee International Women's Centre.
Wonderful.
And lots of different projects running there, from sewing to cooking. Yeah, and yeah, we'll talk about like women only spaces as well. Yeah, that's great. Oh, they're all coming thick and fast. Katrina, sharing lives, sharing languages research project in Aberdeenshire. Oh, another women's group. Wow, yeah, ridiculously good fun. I can attest to that. Yeah.
Great. Katrina, if you could write a little bit more detail in the chat about kind of the activities that you do as well, that'd be super interesting. And also it'd be great to hear a bit more about the research and what you're looking at. Thanks. Gosha, I don't work with grassroots organisation, but teach in different community centres which provide various opportunities. Yeah, this community organising. Absolutely. We touch a bit on community organising towards the end, because I think those two things, ESOL and community work, are really, really closely interlinked. Brilliant. Thank you.
Lisa,
Alex, you've got Lisa's.
Yeah, I really hope I'm also so keen to go to sessions like this after 30 plus years of working in ESOL. And Lisa says, most recently in North East Scotland, started in community education, taught in various different contexts, currently at FE College, would like to work more closely with the community in part-time language delivery with practical hybrid.
Wonderful. Oh, I think you might get a lot out of today then.
Yeah, I hope so.
And Marta,
Yeah.
your volunteer tutor, fantastic work. Well done, thank you. And currently studying for a master's. Oh, brilliant. And I can also see I actually have an alumni, a fellow student, Karen, here. We both studied on the Trinity Diploma together in Edinburgh. So
Oh,
thank you so much
wow.
for coming. But yeah, Marta, I hope it's going well. I teach a group of beginner learners in a community centre, finding out about more informal learning. Yes, brilliant, and thank you. And I think when we developed this talk, we actually thought that we've got some key takeaways that you can implement into your current practice as well, so you don't have to just start up something completely new as well.
Mhm.
Brilliant, thank you.
And then Karen talks about being working for Fife Council, organising lots of different classes in the community, cookery, crafts, all organised through the council rather than grassroots. That's interesting. Oh, that's who you were
Fascinating.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
That's
classmate.
it. Yeah, it's interesting that if there's a tension there about freedom and yeah. And citizen
Yeah, it would be
literacy
really
team,
interesting.
non-profit, operating globally. Oh, and created a basic adult literacy program with free and
Amazing.
paid for resources. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic. And I start to see these hybrids that are happening. I mean, Heart and Parcel were commissioned a lot by the council and organisations who needed that kind of provision. We've got Gota talking about Migrant Voice, an absolutely brilliant organisation. Yes, producing zines, cultural dancings, poetry readings. No, they're brilliant. Thank you for adding
Wow.
that. And helping refugees learn English. Wonderful. That will be useful for you to see some ideas on how to work. And Katrina's given a more detail about parent and child association building. So we did some wee projects with the mums, cooking Arabic and Scottish food, went on walks in the countryside and visited a castle. It sounds incredible. and interpreter Doncaster Council, Olga, welcome. Thank you.
Thank,
Fantastic. And oh
thank you.
yes, Karen Bates has given some more information about the ESOL team. And you're teaching pre-entry. Great. Pre-entry is a fantastic thing for informal learning. Wonderful. Okay, Alex. I think we've got
Wow.
a brilliant, already very skilled
I feel more
audience
nervous.
tonight.
I think I feel more nervous.
Yeah.
So we
Um,
really hope you all kind of what brought you here today. Hopefully you're able to take away something as well, and either apply it to your own context or share something with the people you know. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing, everybody, and please continue to share and chat if you wish while we're talking. Yeah, if you're able to do
Absolutely.
that.
If you found some connections there too, it'd be great to kind of, share and swap details in the chat whilst we're talking. As Alex said, we really don't mind. I'm going to take the next five
Yeah,
to 6 minutes, I think, just kind of
yeah.
introducing a bit about Heart and Parcel and specifically the activities that we do before we move into a little bit of theory. I co-founded Heart and Parcel with my friend Carolina in Manchester, and we started it in 2015 at a time when funding for ESOL was being really cut consecutive year upon year from 2010 actually, and many learners, particularly migrant women that we were seeing, were struggling to access English classes. Myself and Carolina were both working in ESOL and community contexts, and we kept seeing the same problem. People wanted opportunities to practice English in meaningful ways, but formal classes weren't always accessible or reflective of their everyday lives. We started asking ourselves a simple question: what if language learning could happen through something people already love and do together? Like, for example, for us, cooking and food. I mean, we both loved going to each other's houses. Carolina's from Poland. I grew up in Hong Kong and lived in China for many years, and we just were obsessed with making dumplings. So I would go round to her house, and we would make pierogi, and she would be rolling, I'd be pinching, filling the dough, and we'd be boiling it and eating it all the while chatting together. and vice versa. She would do the same at my house. And I learned this when I was in China. People would invite me around to their house and we'd have dumpling parties where we would just get to know each other. I would actually learn a language. I'd learn Chinese. So it started to kind of sow that seed of how that kind of environment is kind of really conducive to learning. At Heart and Parcel, English learning happens through cooking, conversation, and storytelling. So from the beginning, the idea wasn't just about teaching English. It was about creating a different kinds of learning space. So you can see all the different offerings that we do now. This is 10 years on. This is not where we started. The first one was the only one we did when we first started, but we've expanded, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Instead of beginning with grammar or textbooks, our sessions started with food. People brought recipes from their own cultures, we cooked together, and we talked. So cooking naturally creates communication, right? So people ask questions, explain ingredients, give instructions, tell stories about where the dish comes from. And what we found is that language develops very organically in that environment. People are communicating because they want to share something meaningful, not because they're just completing a classroom exercise. So food became a kind of bridge for communication. You can see some of the photos of our class in action. And I want to point out some of the volunteers here who would come on board with us to support and act as models for English language learning. And volunteers are so important to these kinds of projects. They also got a lot out of it, more, well, the same as if not more than some of the learners at times. You can see different methods of teaching. So grassroots is informal, but it does have a formal structure and aspect to it. And you'll start to see this as we go along. But you can see a teacher, that's myself, teaching to a class. There is that loose structure, people using their phones for research, but also some more practice-based activities. And then people got a bit sick of dumplings. So they started to make their own food in the class, which was very, very welcome. So another really important part of the project is recognizing that learners already bring a huge amount of knowledge with them. So valuing learners' knowledge was so important. And one thing that always struck me in traditional ESOL settings, I don't know if you all feel the same, was that learners were also positioned mainly in terms of what they hadn't got. They were being judged by their level of English. But of course, that's only one part of the story. The people who come to our sessions bring languages, professional skills, cultural knowledge, family histories, and life experience. We all know this as ESOL practitioners, don't we? But we rarely kind of highlight it as an issue when it doesn't, when that knowledge isn't shared. At Heart and Parcel, we try to centre that knowledge. Participants will bring recipes from their own cultures and share the stories behind the dishes that they make. Another thing that we noticed quite quickly was that the project was becoming more than just a class. This is kind of as the years are going by the way, this is chronological. Heart and Parcel gradually grew into a community space a couple, 3 or 4 years later, and things take time to build. People came for English practice, but they also came for friendship, support, and connection. Many participants were new to the UK, and some were quite isolated socially. The cooking and sharing food together created a relaxed environment where relationships can form naturally. And over the years, we've seen participants gain confidence, build friendships, and sometimes move into those leadership roles within the project. For me, that's been one of the most rewarding parts of the project, seeing people grow in confidence and take ownership of the space. So you can see our green space where we grow food. I think some of you have already been taking part in activities there as well, which is great. We also realised we listened to people. A lot of people actually didn't like cooking. So we said, oh, well, what do you want? Well, we'd like to just have a place where we can sit together and eat and have a chat. So we were very lucky to have Dishoom. I think there's one in Edinburgh as well. And there's one in Manchester who very kindly gave their space every Tuesday morning and would give us free breakfast and host us in the space. So we'd have coffee and conversation and make friends together. A lot of learners also wanted to practice their English beyond the classroom or the kind of structured space. So we put on podcasting classes so that learners could train themselves up to interview food businesses about their experiences. And they learned a lot about sound recording, but also how to ask those kind of quite important questions and engage with people beyond their classmates. Of course, many grassroots projects, we also had to think about sustainability. So a grassroots social enterprise is really important. Oh, sorry. It's really important to think about money when you're developing a social enterprise model if you want to become more formalized later. So whilst the classes themselves were free for participants, we ran supper clubs, catering events, and cooking workshops for the public. These events raised money to support the learning programme, but they also created opportunities for participants to use their skills in new ways. So, for example, cooking for a public audience or sharing recipes. So the project becomes not just a learning space, but also a platform for visibility and recognition. And you can see some of the online classes that took place during COVID. I think there were some of you who joined, which was really lovely to have everybody popping in from all around the UK, but also around the world. Carolina made some Ukrainian dumplings, I think, there. She decided to branch out, and Paramisa did some samosas online, and those are all the guests' final pieces. You've also got some of our catering. There's Asmahan there on the left with volunteer Icy, and you've got her catering for a doctor's surgery, I think, in Manchester and Longsight. And then we've also got the supper club there, and Refugee Action. Lisa did some catering for Refugee Action. Of course, this may be of interest to any of you. We've got online free teacher resources that you can use that are food related. Please do use them. They're there. They were developed by mine and Karen's teacher trainer, Stephen, who developed these for kind of a B2 level. So please do use them. They're developed from the cookbook, actually, that was made, that were as part of the learners coming together, writing recipes and stories, and then publishing this cookbook, which we then sold to keep those classes free. That's our second one because the first one sold out, which is a good problem to have. So for me, Heart and Parcel has shown that ESOL can be so much more than classroom teaching. It can be a shared social practice rooted in everyday life, cultural exchange, and community. And sometimes the most powerful language learning doesn't happen in the classroom at all. As we know, it happens around a table, cooking together, sharing food, and telling stories. Some photos of our very kind and generous learners who donated their recipes for our cookbook. And this is our second cookbook as well. And I'm going to hand over to Alex because I think it's quite a natural time to move over to how her project grew out of Heart and Parcel.
And it absolutely grew out of Heart and Parcel. So I'm going to talk about the projects which I was involved in Heart and Parcel, and then talk about the Rose Collective, which is kind of very much in its very early stages compared to Heart and Parcel. So the Rose members, for a start, met on Heart and Parcel. So we are either volunteers, teachers, learners, but in the Rose Collective, we all call ourselves members. The projects were online or related to some form of writing. And the projects that I'm going to talk about, which is the blog, the creative writing and cuisine, they were all grounded in Heart and Parcel's values of language, community, and most importantly, recognition. So that idea, as Claire mentioned before, and other people reinforced in the chat, the fact that those who we're working with are bringing so much, and yet I think voices aren't always heard, and therefore they're not recognised. So hopefully by talking through these 3 projects, you'll be able to understand where the Rose Collective is coming from, and then I'll explain that a little bit. Claire's in charge of the slides, so I'm going to say next slide, please, every now and again. So first, next slide, please, Claire. So first of all, I'll kind of talk about the not necessarily the smallest, but this was a face-to-face one. And it was a creative writing in nature project. So over several months, learners met in Manchester and wrote poems and short stories together. And it was based on experiences in the environment. So each session followed the same pattern. And I'm really happy if anyone wants me to share the resources, I can really, I'm really happy to do that. I need to write them up, I think, for the website. Anyway, so the pattern went like this. We'd brainstorm together ideas about what we thought we might be seeing or tasting or smelling or feeling when we go outside in the environment. Then we'd go outside and we all would take notes. We had little booklets and we would take notes. Then we'd come back and we'd share again and we'd talk about what we liked and vocabulary that generated extra ideas for us. I'm not sure if you can see in some of these photos, but we always had a really long piece of wallpaper paper in the middle of the long table, and everyone would add to that. One of the places we worked in was the Portico Library, which is this incredible space in the centre of Manchester, and they hosted us. And then after we'd done all our brainstorming and generating ideas, we'd write our poetry or our short stories based on sometimes some short examples, or maybe I would give some structures. My favourite bit would be then we'd share them and everybody would listen. And I discovered a great little trick where nobody gives their work a title, and then the listeners have to offer a title. So it kind of gives that motivation for listening. And the other thing we had was a really active WhatsApp chat where we'd share photos and extra poems. So we had this evolving kind of journey between the sessions. And then, please could you move to the next slide, Claire? We published a little booklet of all these pictures that you can see. It looks a bit busy because that's all the pictures in our booklet. And you can see the booklet on the website as well, and you can download it from the website. And we also had this great event in Manchester at the People's History Museum, which was catered for by Heart and Parcel. And at the event, we took everybody through the same experience of the writing process. So you can see all the paper in the middle, and we had stimulus from nature and food as well. And some of the writers shared their work and or spoke. Esther shared this incredible poem with everybody. And I really need to acknowledge that this was a Heart and Parcel project, which was funded by the Sam Orton Fund, and that we were able to make the whole project possible for that. Next slide, please. So the next project I'd like to talk about is Cuisine, which is a zine about food, and it was an online zine. So it was different to normal zining spaces where everybody comes and chops up and explores the paper materiality of expression. So this was an online project with a closed group of learners and facilitators, and we met regularly over a few months to share food stories and experiences and objects. We wrote poems, short stories, and sometimes we just added words and images. And again, this was published, and we had a wrap party, again with food from Heart and Parcel. And at the event, we made physical zines together as well. And we, again, I'm holding up like the final published zines, and we're going to send these around to other community groups and also zine libraries around the country. So if you want a copy, please let us know. Again, this was funded by the University of Manchester. So moving on to the next, please, next slide. The Food for Thought blogging project was free. We didn't need any money because we had, this was through Heart and Parcel, and it was all online, and we used Zoom and WhatsApp. So the Heart and Parcel Food for Thought project was the longest running project that I was involved with, and it probably connects most to the Rose Collective. So it started 3 years ago, and Claire came to me and was talking about filling a gap for learners who wanted some more challenging activities, people who were at a more proficient level. And this was all online. Bloggers came from Manchester, but also Mexico, Japan, Northern Ireland. It was accessible for learners who can't access face-to-face provision, as well as people who were accessing going to the cookery classes, cookery and ESOL classes, for example. So it was a great community. And we, next slide, please. We went through a very traditional writing process, which is kind of really traditional in terms of, for example, academic writing, where we generate ideas, we draft, get feedback and redraft. And the drafting stage was when bloggers would send me and other volunteers their work, and then we'd record a really detailed kind of video between about 15 minutes and half an hour. And we'd also send these notes. You can see the different colors. And in the notes, we would say, for example, green is always things we like about the writing. I think that's missed sometimes. Yellow would be grammatical accuracy. Blue would be alternative phrasing. But also, we talk about things like audience awareness, style, purpose, structure, all the things, to be honest, that I kind of work on with academic students, but I was bringing it into this ESOL community space. And the result was a collection of blog posts, which are about a really wide range of topics, and bloggers could choose any topics they liked. There were different voices, different styles, and they were kind of all amplifying the experience, so relating to recognition. Esther and I, one of the bloggers, spoke at the 2024 NATECLA conference in Birmingham, and something someone raised, which is really obvious, is there's now a writing bank of pieces of writing written by English language learners that people are really welcome to use and show examples of. Some of them are longer blogs, some of them are what we call blog bites. So they're kind of shorter, sweeter things, which maybe people who don't feel as comfortable with their English writing produced. Next slide, please. So this leads on, I'll briefly talk about the Rose Collective. So this, when particularly, so cuisine and the creative writing were sort of short-term projects. And then when Food for Thought, the online blogging project closed, we were a little bereft. And as a group, we wanted to continue. So we decided to start the Rose Collective. It was me and a group of 4 other women, and we've created this organization, which is free, it's online, it's women only. I've put a QR code to the website, but it's also in the chat. Esther, who's here this evening, actually designed the website. It's beautiful. And next slide, please. And you can see we've kind of got 3 types of offerings here. So we've got our Zoom classes, which run once a fortnight in the evening. We've got our Grow and Self-Study chat. So this is 3 times a week. So every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Monday is grammar, Wednesday is vocabulary, Friday is fluency. So I share activities and people interact and share activities again. And then we've got a blog, which follows exactly the same process as Food for Thought. Again, this is kind of filling a gap for more proficient English users who want to share, stretch and learn their language. And again, it's online, so it's really low on the money and costs, because we don't have any funding at the moment because we're so new and small. But being online as well means it's open to anyone. And that means we're open to people who can't access face-to-face provision. For example, if they're housebound, they're disabled, they've got young kids, that's also why we're in the evenings as well. And it's also really, really important to say that we checked with Claire before we set this up, because Claire's laughing, she didn't know I was going to say this, but because we're basically stealing all the ideas, right? We're appropriating all the ideas from Heart and Parcel. So we really checked with Claire, and also we're all Heart and Parcel alumni. So yeah, we made sure, and we were cautious not to just take these without the acknowledgement. So I want to acknowledge that here as well, and all the things that we learned on Heart and Parcel when we were working on there together as well. So that's the Rose Collective.
Alex. Thank you. I think imitation is the best form of flattery. No, I think honestly that the real point is that you can see at Heart and Parcel where there is space for learners, for members. I like Alex's word there, for members to grow. You can see that the delegation of roles can actually start to move away from you. As ESOL practitioners, we have so much to plan, to organise, to coordinate on top of everything else. So if you have very kind of talented and nurturing those skills, which Alex is actually very, very, very good at, and kind of coordinating a group of volunteers and learners and members together, you can see where it can grow. So brilliant. Okay, if you're not too tired of us speaking yet, we're going to push on for a little bit longer because we'd like to kind of give you a little bit of food for thought before we put you into breakout rooms. Often grassroots projects and informal projects can sometimes just be seen as set up just for fun or something very quickly that people have just done without much thought. But I think all of you here in the chat, I know a lot of work went into what you do, because I myself also went through all that organizing, all of that planning, all of that admin, all of the checking. I really, really appreciate, and I think Alex does well. There is formality and structure behind these grassroots projects, and I don't think they get the recognition that they deserve. Community organizing is difficult, and it requires time and resilience. So we're going to dive into a little bit about the theory, just to show you how much thought myself and Alex have been kind of mulling over, and how we tailor our projects to that. So we have 3 areas which we think are key, and hopefully it will resonate with you. We have learning collaboratively, recognition of knowledges, and the care of the space. Alex is going to take the first one here.
So first thing I need to say is I really enjoy connecting kind of theory and pedagogical thinking to the practicalities of what I'm doing with the Rose Collective and Heart and Parcel. I just think it's so embodied in what we're doing. The first thing is the idea of who we're working with and the fact that we're learning collaboratively. So a few lenses here to look through when we're thinking about who is in these learning spaces and the pedagogical values that we bring about how the learning happens. So there's a few things here. Communities of practice. Some of you will be really familiar with this. So it's a concept originated by Lave and Wenger, and they talk about a group of people. So it could be learners, writers, teachers who have a shared endeavor. I think that's great. And a lot of the idea is great, but I've got a huge problem with the fact that they talk about people being novices and joining a community of practice by learning the ropes. And they talk about being a novice and then becoming, and I hate this word, legitimate in the community of practice. So there's a lovely paper by Morita, 2004, and she really challenges that idea of that monodirectional assimilation. And she says that communities of practice change and they transform every time new people join. And so there's a renegotiation that happens every time people join a community of practice. And so it really equalizes the space, but it also shows that that we need to be flexible with our work. And the other thing that she's saying is not everybody is achieving a single goal, but and there's not a right and wrong, there's not a legitimate and a novice way of doing things. There is the way that we do things as a community of practice. So a really clear example, in the Rose Collective, we do 12-week seasons, and the Zoom classes are closed for that amount of time, that 12 weeks. And so we accept new registrations every 12 weeks. Registrations are open now. Please encourage any learners to come join us if you wish. But But that means that our community of practice it becomes a combination of returning members and new people. So we're kind of we've got a new group every time. So we've got new stories, new language, new accents, new ways of talking, new questions, and that is all legitimate. There's no such thing as a novice. Of course, it can make sometimes if you haven't got a closed group, for example, like that, it can be quite challenging because you just don't know who's going to walk through the door, right? But I think it's about just accepting that those people are going to bring resources too. A related concept to this is Vygotsky's ZPD or ZPD. And again, it's a great idea that we learn from others, right? Really simple, beautiful. But again, there's a bit of a problem because he talks about learning from better peers. So there's always this sense of some people know more than others and some people know less than others, which really irritates me, especially when we're talking about multilingual adults, right? Who have had huge amounts of experience before. So the New York State Education Department, again, it's a beautiful little paper there. It explains what they call the expanded ZPD. And this shows that learning is a two-way process. So I might be learning from you about something, but at the same time, you might be learning something from me. So everyone's learning together. So for example, in the Rose Collective, we don't call ourselves, we'll talk about this a bit later, but we don't call ourselves learners, teachers, volunteers. We're just all members. And the language emerges from what we're talking about and what we're doing in the moment. And we all bring different resources. My resources are linguistic. That happens to be the case, but I'm always learning other things at the same time. Next slide, please. And just to say that really connects to this idea of funds of knowledge and funds of identity. So these are all about drawing on the skills and experience of the multilingual individual, which is then swapped, it's shared, it's developed, and we grow, we bloom together. Funds of identity is an expansion of funds of knowledge, and that refers to our skills and our knowledge which we most connect with. So they're an integral part of our identity. And then that links to Bonnie Norton's lovely idea of learner investment, which is quite similar to learner motivation, but it shows that our learning spaces need to acknowledge our skills, but they also need to reflect our motivation. And she talks about imagined selves. So participation really depends on learners feeling valued, they're feeling respected, they're feeling like there's a reason for them to be there, not just to pass a test so they can go get a job, and able to claim the right to speak. So the Rose Collective, when we first came together, we really emphasized how what we were talking about our aims, and we're like, we want to be ourselves in English. We want to be able to say what we want to say in English without limitations. We want to make jokes. We want to tell stories. We want to talk about what we did yesterday, but in our own way. So yeah, that's hopefully helpful. And Claire is now going to.
Yeah, I'll quickly do this one because I'm not quite aware of the time now.
I'm really
sorry, guys. We're very passionate about this. So Donna Haraway's concept, and here I've just popped that here because it's quite useful to know about embodied or situated knowledge. So it's the idea that knowledge is not neutral or universal. Instead, it's shaped by our environments, histories, and lived experience. So kind of just adding to the kind of earlier theories that that Alex talked about. And obviously James Simpson and Mel Cook, two kind of very well-known ESOL researchers, they argue similar things, that teaching should pay greater attention to learners' multilingual reality. I think we've already talked about that quite a lot, but we're really, really interested in that knowledge that's not often recognised. I'm going to move on to the care of the space, because I think this is so important. I'm really interested in space at the moment, and I think Alex has rightly touched on a couple of things earlier on in her presentation with the Rose Collective. So grassroots communicative ESOL emerges from the idea that learning language should be connected to people's everyday lives. So it prioritizes dialogue, community, and learner experience rather than formal instruction. So to understand how that works, we draw on several theoretical ideas about space, power, and learning. So the space is crucial, and it involves thinking about the formal and informal aspects of the environment. So on the one level, you've got the practical responsibilities, the administration, the safeguarding, the boundaries, the legal considerations. They have to be there still. It's not just something that we felt we couldn't just set up. We have a duty of care here to our learners. But care also means creating a space built on trust, respect, and a recognition of learners' experience. So here we can also think about the shift from safe spaces to safer or brave spaces, discussed by the Rowstone Collective in 2014. There's a good paper here. So the idea is that learning spaces cannot eliminate tension or disagreement entirely. You know, it's just impossible. We have, as Alex said, we have multilingual adults in the room with lots of different backgrounds, lots of different opinions. It's impossible to kind of ignore that when you're in a space. But it's all about creating structures that allow people to navigate difficulty, conflict, and difference respectfully. But creating this kind of learning environment requires careful attention to how the space itself is constructed. So recognizing that space is socially produced also means recognizing power within that space. So we acknowledge that learning spaces are shaped by lived experience. They include friction, tension, different perspectives. As I said, it's messy. It's difficult, it can feel uncomfortable, but by intentionally designing the space through care and boundaries and respect, we're hoping to create that learning environment. And in this way, the grassroots communicative projects don't become just about learning language, but about creating a shared space where those knowledges can be emerged and can be celebrated. And if that seems very abstract, we're hoping to ground it a little bit at the end. But we'd love to hear from you now, if it's not too much trouble. Alex, I don't know if you've already popped the handout in the chat already, because I'm very aware that that's a lot of the theoretical hand. Yes, you popped the handout. Wonderful.
And the questions, and also the questions people start thinking about.
Yes. So Alex, if you want to set that one up.
Yeah. So is it okay if we go into breakout rooms? We've put 15 minutes, but yeah, about 10, 15 minutes. Might be flexible on that.
I think 10, yeah, I think let's do 10. Let's do 10.
Can we do 10 minutes? Is that all right? So these questions, which of these theories resonate or connect with your own work? Have you got any theories we haven't mentioned related to this? For example, Freirean, bell hooks, etc. And that's it. And feel free to go into the breakout rooms, or if you don't fancy it, then yeah, you don't have to. There's no obligation.
Alex, some people can't see the hands out. If you look at Alex's last post in the chat, it should be there where she says, here's a handout with a summary of these theories. It should be connected there, a PDF. I don't know if you can see that one.
Oh, thanks, Emma. Thank you.
So hopefully that will be
and you can click
enough.
to download. Thank you. It might have taken a moment to upload, maybe. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Yeah, we have breakout rooms. Mm-hmm.
And thank you to listening for us so far.
Wonderful.
Claire, I think you're...
Oh, great, we've got...
Oh, yeah, you don't have to
try. 3 breakout rooms. Lovely. Fantastic. And
I'm just going to pause the recording as people are joining the rooms. Perfect. Off to you, ladies.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for taking part in breakout rooms. I know it can be a different experience. So thank you so much for sharing. And we want to do a little bit of feedback later, but please do write any kind of interesting comments or reflections that you had in your own groups in the chat, because it'd be really, really great to hear. So I think we're going to move straight on because we want to leave a bit of time to hear your reflections. And so myself and Alex are going to be answering these questions. We thought these were really important to think about when you are setting up a project, or things we thought we would like to hear other people talk about if we were learning from them. So how is it set up in order to foster collaborative and communicative learning? How do we create opportunities for embodied knowledge, the theory from before, to be recognized, nurtured and celebrated? How do we care for our spaces? And also we thought, what's been difficult? Because everyone likes to hear about that. And to share those thoughts. So you can also think about those things too, and please feel free to put them in the chat, but I'm going to answer mine first. Is that right, Alex? Yeah, I think I am. That's a nice picture of some food, just to break things up. Also from the cookbook, by the way. So when we started Heart and Parcel, we were just thinking about how to foster, create a space where learners could really communicate and collaborate. So it wasn't just about the lessons or the activities, it was about how the project itself was structured. So from the very beginning of Heart and Parcel, we made sure people could take on different roles, contributing recipes, helping facilitate sessions, supporting each other, or shaping the direction of projects. And that was both volunteers and learners together. This way, learners weren't just attending a class, they were part of a community in action. And it can be something really, really small as well, like taking care of the board or laying out the handouts or clearing away afterwards. This project grew in different formats, often organically. So we started with cooking and ESOL sessions, but soon we had WhatsApp groups, online communities, drop-in classes, fixed creative projects, blogs, podcasts, and even teacher training. And through this growth, we always tried to stay true to our 4 core values, which were developed as we grew into a more formalized structure. And they were community, food, recognition, and learning. These values always guided us when we were thinking about making decisions. So if anybody within the group came with an idea, I've got an idea to set up, I don't know, a mother and baby group. We're like, brilliant, here's a piece of paper, the proposal. Can you write me a little proposal about how it aligns to our 4 key values? And if it does, great, let's take it further and talk more. And a big part of our approach was listening to participants. Feedback and evaluation weren't just a formality for us. It was a way for learners to feel and to have real decision-making power. They told us what worked, what didn't, and what they wanted to explore next. And that co-creation shaped the project from the inside out. And I have to say that Alex has taken this to a whole other level, which she'll talk about in the Rose Collective. And another key question for us was, how do we celebrate that knowledge? People arrive with already those skills, as I mentioned. So we wanted to make that visible by creating outputs like blogs, podcasts, cookbooks, and social media content. So suddenly these participants weren't just learners of English, they were experts and creators sharing knowledge that matters. There's a couple of more photos of the cookbook as well. And how do we care for the spaces? So I mentioned a bit about it, which was a little bit abstract earlier in theory, but let's bring it back down to our sessions. What do we do? Well, we use good quality ingredients where possible. We tried to create a welcoming, effective atmosphere, and we added small touches. So these are things like having really nice tea and coffee set out, having a variety of different biscuits, making sure the temperature's just right in the room, adding music, making sure that all the tables and chairs are set out in a nice way. These are really small, actionable things that can add a massive difference to people's well-being when they enter into the space. And I always made sure a volunteer was at the door welcoming people with a big smile. That was really important to us. Many projects ran over longer periods so that trust and relationships could grow. We started in 2015, 10 years we were building up these projects, small, slow, and we kept going. Every space had codes of conduct created with the group so that respect and expectations were shared. So we had a piece of paper. I'm sure you've signed up contracts before with your learners too. But I have to say that sometimes those contracts were lost. We had rolling enrollment. We had people coming in who didn't know the rules. We sometimes didn't have time to go through them. So it was having to kind of reaffirm them on the spot. So this just adds to my next point. My significant challenge in Heart and Parcel was it was always messy and unpredictable. I was always trying to chase my tail and catch up. People's lives are unpredictable, attendance fluctuates, and plans sometimes have to change at short notice. that was really uncomfortable for me as a teacher who's been taught that things have to be controlled, that observation has to be within those timings, I have to hit those points. But actually, over time, I realized the unpredictability is what makes grassroots spaces responsive and alive. So the flexibility became my professionalism, not my control. So in a nutshell, creating communicative ESOL isn't just about designing activities, it's about how the space is structured, how people can contribute, and how care underpins everything we do. So I'm going to pass on to Alex to briefly go through the Rose Collective questions for.
So I've answered
those questions.
Yeah, and we were saying I've answered a lot of this already, so I'll be super quick. So these two questions about being collaborative, communicative, and nurturing embodied knowledge, I feel like that's exactly what we're trying to do with absolutely everything we're doing. So I mentioned before that we've got an advisory group, along with myself, and we kind of set up the initial aims and intentions, and there's constant consultation, including extra formal meetings, but also every time there's a session coming up or there's maybe some ideas, we all decide that together. So we're all learning and sharing together, and we have different facilitators for Zoom sessions. So, for example, I've facilitated some. Esther, who's here this evening, has facilitated some with me. There's Jess, who also facilitates. So everybody kind of takes turns. And also kind of highlighting times when we're learning from each other. So could you move to the next slide, please, Claire? I don't have any pretty pictures because we're online and I'm aware of anonymity as well. But you can see I've put a couple of screenshots of the chat here because it's this idea of acknowledging and recognizing when people are sharing together ideas. So this first one. So we've got this Grow and Self-Study WhatsApp chat. And as I mentioned before, we have different activities and we always have lots of questions to discuss. And then I give accuracy corrections. And somebody who hadn't added any responses to the questions said, Alex, I appreciate it. I think these corrections are so useful. And they were my corrections to other people's stuff. And I said, brilliant. It's wonderful that we're helping each other. So and I've blocked out people's names here, but one Rose and another Rose share lots of ideas, and then I can share corrections, and then everyone can learn together. So it's highlighting these moments when everybody is bringing, even when it's not even, but when it's language as well. I feel like there is sometimes a hierarchy, and I get things directed at me because I'm the English as a first language speaker. And again, this other one with the thank you, I highlight really interesting vocabulary that people have shared as well. Because if people don't want to trawl through, they can see. And often it's really, really helpful everyday stuff like tumble dryer or maternity hospital. So embracing the everyday as well is what we do. Next slide, please, Claire. So also this idea of being structured. So obviously, as I mentioned, we're online, we're women only. We decided to do that, and we're accessible. But something I've learned a lot across the years is to be organized and as messy as it can get. And also sometimes there doesn't seem to be engage, one or two people will respond, or maybe two or three people will come along to a session one day, especially during Ramadan, I notice. And it's about us showing up. It's about us being there, and that regular showing up and knowing there's a certain time, there's a certain day. I think this is absolutely essential, particularly for trauma-informed work. And finally, this, we talked about that theory because we see it as respecting everybody. So everything's grounded in pedagogical theory, which shows respect as for us as a group of intelligent, curious women, I've written there. But significant challenges, as I say, we're right at the beginning. We're in our second season at the moment. And I feel like, what is creativity? Because we're trying to be creative. We're not just writing, we're doing things like comic comics, screenplays, all sorts of different things, and it's like, oh, sometimes I feel like I'm just still trying to find my feet with our top content is. I've got a massive fear of failure, which, I think if you're starting a new project, I think that's pretty, I hope that's pretty natural. And also this idea of positionality and kind of accepting this hierarchy, which as much as I try and fight it, I do have to acknowledge that, I have a lot of privileges right now where we are. Not only am I a first language English speaker and I'm working with people who are developing their English, but of the way I look, the way I sound, where I work, all of these different things, I have to acknowledge that. I have to, yeah, and just be aware of it, and hopefully being aware of it then informs how I respond, and I can be a little bit more overt with things, with other things. Claire, do you want to finish off?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that and being really vulnerable as well. I think it's really important. And I think someone mentioned that they wanted to learn more tips and tricks to actually implement into their practice now. So these are the 5 things we came up with. Make sure you structure that space for collaboration, design the project so that the learners can take on different roles, use multiple formats, play around with it. Just think about your space. Is it not just, I think I love Karen's idea about taking people out, walking into a space. That's brilliant. Go online, WhatsApp. You can do some output as well. Think beyond that single classroom. Let new activities emerge organically, but keep them grounded to your core values. Center learners' knowledge and skills and recognize that they bring everything with them. Check in with them. What do they want to do? Constantly ask. It's really important. And care for your space and community. I think these are practical details, but also social structures as well. And finally, embrace that messiness and unpredictability. It's rarely neat or fully predictable, but that's the beauty of it. Try and see it, rather than see it as a problem, treat it as part of being responsive to participants' lives. So flexibility allows your project to remain authentic, inclusive, and participant-centered. That's all we had today. We hope that we've not bombarded you with too much stuff. It might be helpful to process, and please do take the hands out with you. And I think the slides are going to be shown. But we'd love to answer any questions if you had any. If you don't have any now, also very welcome to email us. But just thanks so much for listening.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Thank you.
If it's okay, I would like to ask a question. I wanted to know how you have been going about students or learners or collaborators who have a basic literacy needs. How you have we have an ongoing literacy project in Natekla Scotland, so I'm always thinking about those learners, and I know that it can be a big challenge when planning activities when you have that situation. So any advice or ideas that you can share would be lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I think I'll take this one, Alex, because you're kind of quite.
Please do, because I'm at the other end.
Level. Yeah. And so, Kasia, is that are you talking about pre-entry at entry 1 level?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it's a really good question. We actually found that leaning more towards the practical sides of the activities was really useful. And as you said, it's difficult to even talk about getting people through the door because of the literacy levels haven't been developed to a level where they can read a poster. Or so a couple of things. One, we worked with other partners, so we worked with referrals from job centres, organisations, ESOL classes that were oversubscribed, and they would use their resource, maybe translators, sometimes with Refugee Action and charities, to send the learners to the space that we were holding the session. So that really helped. And then in terms of activities, just going really, really slowly and making sure that most of the activities that were set up had kind of realia and very kind of obvious objects and things so people could engage on that level. We did start to do kind of differentiation between learners if we were on a longer project for 10 weeks, but we never separated people into different classes. It was more within a room, and then people had different kind of areas where there would be more volunteers on one table than there would be on another table. So we always had a ratio of 1 volunteer to every 2 to 3 learners if it was really busy. But that just meant that we could have people with kind of basic literacy levels helped in a kind of very strong way. We also had lots of volunteers whose parents were living alongside other languages, and so they themselves spoke kind of 2 or 3 different languages in the home, and so they were able to do some translation if needed. So I think those 3 things were quite key to getting people through the doors first. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you. I really appreciate the comment about the posters, you know, making creating other routes. That's really good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Someone had a question there? Someone unmuted themselves? No.
Could I share something about, well, we're talking about levels and things like that?
Yeah.
So Esther's just shared our flyer, which Esther's a designer, as you can see. But what we had a kind of thing, I sort of said, oh, we work up the other end of the scale, I suppose. But we really have to be cautious about how we communicate this to people, because what I found is people will often identify themselves as beginners. So I know you were talking about the really, really early speakers of English and writers of English as well. But we found that people, if we say, oh, if you are, advanced or something, people might not be able, but won't be able to connect with that because they don't see themselves as advanced, because others are advanced, not them. So what we've done is we've removed any idea of levels in the website, and instead our registration form is aimed at people. Hopefully, if they can understand our registration form, they know that they can come. And similarly, like, we've got the blogs there as well, so people can read them and kind of see what kind of level people are working at. But I think that's important as well, not to kind of name levels. I know you're talking about a different thing, but because people identify really differently.
Yeah, I found that as well. I think you and I have spoken about that at length. Kind of the labeling of different levels can be difficult. Oh, thanks, Gosha. I think people are having trouble seeing the poster again, so I think Gosha's probably got it there. I'd love to hear I'd love to hear kind of your experiences from your breakout rooms. Was there anything? Oh, Katrina, you've got a question. Hi.
It's not really a question, it's kind of a statement. With funding being pulled left, right and centre in the last, 4 or 5 years, it's very difficult for me to start up any project. So we've been leaning on maybe volunteering projects and things. And because I did the sharing languages, I had to do the peer education training. So what I started doing was, or people contacted me because they knew I did it, was to deliver a peer education training to volunteers who wanted to start up language cafes in Aberdeenshire. And you think Aberdeenshire is not that big, but I was shocked when I was writing up a report to see that it's nearly 3,000 miles square. And you think, so we have cafes up North Aberdeenshire, South Aberdeenshire. So that's what I do, but I also do like a what the English tutors call a pre-entry. In Scotland, we have 3 levels below beginner.
Yeah,
right.
It's different, yeah.
I also do, because a lot of the volunteers said, well, it's okay chit-chatting and trying to chat to them, but would like to actually start them off with English. So I deliver a 2-part course for that as well. But and I've actually lost another thing I was going to say. Sorry, it's my age. But yeah, it's getting the volunteers. But oh yes, okay. So since COVID, because Aberdeenshire's so big, so vast, and because of lack of funding, and I work for the WEA. So we teach the resettlement families that come in. So it's been online since COVID. But what I find is I've gotten well into all these online tools. Do you know, making audio books, which I know Natekla Scotland's done a fabulous suite of books, and now they've got some associated worksheets and things, which is brilliant. But I use the audiobooks to help
Fantastic.
so whatever they learn in class, whatever topic we're doing, I've got audiobook pages that match it, so they can actually do some study at home and things. So even if you are starting a grassroots group, do you know, even just thinking about, I don't know, whatever topic you're going to be talking about next week, just to have some sentences and pictures and the recording up to help them kind of understand, well, that's that picture, that's that word, that's what we're doing next week. Or put it up just after you've done it so they can go and review it and practice it.
You've touched on some, I was just going to say, you've touched on some really, really, really important points there, Katrina, from before, and like what great work you do as well there. It's really fantastic to see that it's, you know, that all your kind of hard work is also spreading out. And I think that's really important to be able to kind of disseminate that very effectively, it seems. And you touched on that point of volunteers. And I think this is something that I'm still grappling with. We rely so heavily on volunteers, and it teeters into this kind of exploitation area. And it is something that we need to consider with grassroots projects as well. And then the other thing that you mentioned as well about kind of, a chit chat's very nice, but a lot of learners want that kind of extra formality, and that is what Alex was talking about as well, and what you do with your work. And so I think that so it's that kind of grey space between informal and formal, and we try to subvert that through those different structures. So thank you for sharing that.
We can utilize online more to support people, to support volunteers and actual learners themselves, because Padlet's a great thing. It's one link, click, and you can have everything there. And also Ed Cafe, I've started looking into that, because for me, I want my learners to go out and look about Aberdeenshire and go visit places, and you can get YouTube videos and you can put them onto Ed Cafe, and you can get the video, you can get them to questions about it, answer questions, and it's great. There's a whole world of things out there. It's just finding the time to actually study it and then do it.
That's it. And pulling those resources, and that's another bugbear, isn't it, across ESOL, is that, you know, it's very decentralized. We're all doing lots of stuff and there's lots of duplication, which is really frustrating, because we should all, but I think amazing organizations like Natekla and Natekla Scotland do a good job of pulling it together. But does anyone else have any questions? Thank you, Katrina, for that. Or any thoughts or comments that they shared, any theory that they felt, wow, I'm going to use that, or I've already used that? Or is there any theory that we haven't mentioned that you're interested in?
I was just going to say, ladies, that, you know, everything sounds absolutely amazing and very inspirational. And I hope Karen, who mentioned her walks in the park, follows up with a poetry, maybe even a book with, you know, with
absolutely.
It can also be a mix. It could be a mix of photos, collage, ideas. Yeah, there's so much that can be done.
And if you haven't got any, and also if you haven't got any money, I really suggest having a look at something like WordPress, or like Katrina just mentioned, Padlet. Like, these online tools are great for money saving. Sometimes you have to pay for the subscription to get the extra settings, but at a very basic level, for sharing and acknowledging, if you don't have funding to print, then to share it online, sometimes that's, you know, that is all we can do, and it is really meaningful, really.
But then there's a lot you can do this way, isn't there? And we use Book Creator for our book readers, and you can use that too. And then again, you can add audio to it. So any poetry that the learners might write, you know, they can narrate as well, and then it's a bit more meaningful, or maybe not meaningful, but powerful is the word. It's a bit more powerful when you hear the actual voice of that person.
Yeah, for sure.
definitely.
Sure. Wonderful. Fantastic. Well, if you don't have any more questions now, that's absolutely fine. But please do, I think our emails will be shared, but please do feel free to contact us. We're more than happy to chat through anything or any ideas that you have. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much to Alex, to Claire. We will also share the links that we shared in the chat with in the YouTube channel as well under the video. So there's access to the flyers, to Rose Collective, to Heart and Parcel resources as well. So we'll have that shared for everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful. Glad to hear it. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Katrina. Take care. Thank you.
I'm going to pause the recording.